In the volatile twilight of the Iran-Iraq War during the late 1980s, the Persian Gulf had become one of the most dangerous bodies of water on Earth. Since 1980, Iran and Iraq had been locked in a brutal conflict, and as the war dragged on, it spilled into the Gulf, endangering commercial shipping and igniting fears among global powers. Oil tankers became strategic targets, each side hoping to choke off the other's economic lifeline. In response, the United States launched Operation Earnest Will, a bold and unprecedented move aimed at maintaining the free flow of oil and safeguarding Western interests. As part of this mission, the U.S. Navy began reflagging Kuwaiti tankers with the American flag and escorting them through hostile waters. It was in this climate of tension and shadow warfare that the USS Samuel B. Roberts FFG-58, a sleek, modern guided missile frigate, found itself patrolling the central Persian Gulf in April 1988. On April 14th, during a routine operation in what was assumed to be a relatively secure sector, the ship's hull was violently ripped open by an Iranian mine. The explosion erupted beneath the waterline with devastating force, instantly flooding the engine room and throwing sailors to the deck. A hole roughly 15 feet wide gaped in the ship's hull, threatening to send the Samuel B. Roberts to the bottom of the Gulf. 10 sailors were injured in the blast, some with broken limbs, others with burns or concussions. But amid the chaos, the crew displayed extraordinary courage and professionalism. Trained for such emergencies, they executed damage control drills with surgical precision. Fires were extinguished, watertight compartments were sealed, pumps groaned into action, draining the intruding seawater. For hours, the crew fought a losing battle against the flooding, but they refused to surrender their ship. Eventually, their perseverance paid off. Against the odds, the Samuel B. Roberts stayed afloat. Towed back to port with a makeshift patch over her torn belly, the frigate became a symbol of resilience and preparedness. Yet the attack could not go unanswered. The incident sent shockwaves through Washington, igniting debates and compelling a decisive military response that would come just days later. The mine that nearly sank the Roberts was traced back to Iran, and as tensions boiled over, the United States prepared to retaliate, not with cautionary diplomacy, but with force. The mining of the USS Samuel B. Roberts in April 1988 marked a turning point in the simmering naval tensions between the United States and Iran in the Persian Gulf. As the crew of the damaged frigate fought to stabilize their ship, word of the incident raced back to Washington, D.C., where policymakers quickly recognized the need for a decisive, measured response. The U.S. could not allow such an attack on its naval forces to go unanswered, especially in such a critical region for global oil supplies. Thus, Operation Praying Mantis was born. Operation Praying Mantis was not conceived as a full-scale war measure, but rather as a strategic, targeted action intended to neutralize Iranian military capabilities while avoiding an uncontrollable escalation. The goal was twofold. First, to deliver a powerful blow to Iran's capacity to threaten international shipping, and second, to communicate the seriousness of U.S. resolve in defending its assets and allies in the Gulf. Military planners moved quickly. Intelligence gathered from satellite surveillance and regional partners pointed to specific Iranian targets with both symbolic and tactical value. Chief among them were several offshore oil platforms in the Persian Gulf. While ostensibly civilian, these platforms had been co-opted by the Iranian military and were now serving as command and control centers for attacks against shipping lanes. These platforms were outfitted with radar, communications gear, and even anti-aircraft defenses, effectively transforming them into forward operating bases. The U.S. response was carefully calibrated. On April 18, 1988, just 4 days after the Roberts struck the mine, American naval forces were put into motion. The operation was designed to last only 1 day, but it would become the largest surface naval battle for the U.S. since World War II. Coordinated strikes would be launched against selected targets, starting with the oil platforms. The mission called for Marines to first warn any personnel to evacuate, providing a chance for surrender or retreat before the platforms were destroyed by naval gunfire and airstrikes. Task Force 165, a naval force composed of guided missile destroyers, cruisers, and aircraft, steamed toward their assigned targets. Helicopters hovered above the choppy Gulf waters, providing reconnaissance and close air support. Precision was paramount. The Navy wanted to send a message, not spark an international incident. As the task force approached the first platform, warnings were broadcast in both English and Farsi. When no response came, the order was given, and heavy gunfire erupted. Flames leapt from the stricken platform, and thick black smoke billowed into the sky. The scene was repeated at several locations. In each case, American forces moved swiftly and decisively, minimizing risks to their own personnel while ensuring that Iranian capabilities were thoroughly degraded. Yet the operation did not stop with the destruction of the platforms. Iranian fast attack boats and frigates began to sortie out of port, prompting direct naval engagements. Skirmishes broke out in the open waters, and U.S. aircraft engaged multiple Iranian vessels. The guided missile cruiser USS Wainwright locked onto and sank the Iranian frigate Sahand after it fired missiles at American aircraft. Throughout the day, U.S. forces maintained strict control, avoiding overreach while asserting dominance. The outcome was clear. Iran's naval forces were significantly weakened, and the U.S. had made its red lines unmistakably known. The destruction of the oil platforms and the sinking of several Iranian ships sent a chilling message to Tehran. Provocations would not go unanswered, and U.S. military capabilities in the Gulf were not to be underestimated. By the time the sun set over the Persian Gulf, Operation Praying Mantis had achieved its objectives. Though brief, the operation reshaped the balance of naval power in the region and underscored the dangers of asymmetric warfare in confined maritime theaters. For the U.S. Navy, it was both a test of readiness and a statement of intent. For Iran, it was a painful lesson in the costs of direct confrontation with a superpower. The operation also had a broader geopolitical impact. It demonstrated to allies and adversaries alike that the United States was committed to maintaining stability in the Gulf and willing to use force in defense of international law and freedom of navigation. While Operation Praying Mantis did not end the Iran-Iraq War or resolve the complex web of tensions in the Middle East, it firmly established the U.S. as the dominant naval power in the region, a role it continues to play today. On the morning of April 18, 1988, the Persian Gulf awoke to the thundering echo of warships and the roar of attack aircraft. The United States Navy, executing Operation Praying Mantis, initiated its largest surface naval combat operation since World War II. The strike was a carefully orchestrated response to the mining of the USS Samuel B just days earlier, which had severely damaged the ship and injured several crew members. Washington had decided the Iranian threat to American and international shipping lanes in the Gulf could no longer go unanswered. The operation commenced with a series of coordinated strikes on two major Iranian oil platforms, Sabalan and Siri. These platforms, while ostensibly civilian oil infrastructure, had long been repurposed by the Iranian military as surveillance and communications hubs. Before the attack, U.S. naval forces broadcast clear warnings in both English and Farsi, providing Iranian personnel the opportunity to evacuate. Once it was confirmed that the platforms had been cleared of personnel, the American assault began. Naval gunfire erupted from U.S. surface combatants, including destroyers and cruisers, followed by close-in air support. Shells from 5-inch guns ripped into the structures, engulfing the Sabalan platform in flames. Meanwhile, Navy SEALs and Marine units secured the surrounding area to ensure no military reinforcements could intervene. The Siri platform met a similar fate, its antennas and radar dishes crumpling under the barrage. These initial strikes succeeded in knocking out key Iranian maritime surveillance capabilities, blinding the Iranian military and reducing its ability to track U.S. and allied ship movements. Iran quickly retaliated. Iranian forces launched Baghmar speedboats in an attempt to disrupt commercial and military traffic in the Gulf. In response, U.S. aircraft and ship-based helicopters tracked and engaged these fast-moving vessels. One by one, the Baghmars were intercepted and destroyed with precision gunfire and rockets, reinforcing the message that aggression would be met with overwhelming force. But the confrontation escalated further when the Iranian Navy deployed its major surface combatants. The frigate Sahand, equipped with anti-ship missiles and air defenses, locked onto and fired at a U.S. Navy A-6 intruder aircraft conducting surveillance operations. The attack drew a swift and decisive counterattack. American forces responded with a salvo of AGM-84 Harpoon missiles launched from the USS Joseph Strauss, along with laser-guided bombs delivered from A-6 intruders. The Sahand never stood a chance. The Harpoon missiles struck first, ripping open the hull and igniting massive fires. As damage control crews struggled to contain the inferno, the precision bombs struck the vessel again. Explosions tore through the magazine and fuel compartments. Flames engulfed the decks as the Sahand began to list heavily. Minutes later, she sank beneath the surface, leaving behind a column of black smoke and burning wreckage. The drama was not over. The Iranian frigate Sabalan, sister ship to the Sahand, also took to the sea to challenge the Americans. Like her counterpart, she engaged a U.S. aircraft, this time drawing the attention of another A-6 intruder. The pilot released a single laser-guided bomb. It struck amidships, disabling the ship's electrical systems and leaving her dead in the water. Though the Sabalan did not sink, she was crippled and had to be towed back to port by Iranian support vessels. Throughout the day, U.S. forces engaged multiple Iranian naval units, including fast attack boats and patrol craft. Each time, American coordination and firepower proved decisive. Superior intelligence, air cover, and strike capabilities ensured that Iran's naval resistance was swiftly overwhelmed. By the end of April 18th, the U.S. Navy had not only neutralized significant Iranian maritime assets, but had demonstrated an unambiguous commitment to defending freedom of navigation in the Gulf. The scope and precision of Operation Praying Mantis sent shockwaves through the region and reverberated across the globe. It marked a turning point in U.S.-Iranian relations and underscored the risks Iran faced if it continued to escalate conflict at sea. It also reaffirmed the U.S. Navy's dominant presence in the Gulf, a force capable of responding with overwhelming might when provoked. In a single day of combat, the Navy had shifted the balance of naval power in the Persian Gulf, establishing a precedent for future American responses to regional aggression. Operation Praying Mantis concluded on April 18, 1988, in less than 24 hours, but its impact would ripple far beyond that single day. From the moment the first shells struck the Iranian oil platforms at Sasan and Siri, to the last missile fired at the crippled Iranian naval forces, the United States Navy had executed one of the most complex and decisive maritime operations since the Second World War. The objective had been clear: a firm but measured retaliation for the mining of the USS Samuel B. That objective was met with an efficiency and intensity that left no doubt about America's resolve. Throughout the operation, the U.S. Navy displayed a remarkable combination of firepower, strategic foresight, and coordination across air, surface, and electronic warfare domains. The planning behind Praying Mantis was meticulous. It allowed Iranian personnel time to evacuate before launching attacks on the oil platforms, demonstrating both strategic clarity and a commitment to minimizing unnecessary loss of life. The U.S. Navy's carrier-based aircraft and missile-equipped warships worked in unison. hitting every targeted installation and vessel with precision. The Iranian response, while aggressive, was no match for American superiority in both technology and tactics. The frigate Sahand was sunk after firing upon U.S. aircraft, struck by Harpoon anti-ship missiles and laser-guided bombs. Its sister ship, Sabalan, attempted to join the fray, but was quickly silenced and left dead in the water by a well-placed bomb that left her listing and in flames. Iranian Boghammer speedboats were engaged and destroyed by American helicopters equipped with Hellfire missiles, and support vessels used for laying mines or conducting surveillance were also neutralized. By sunset, the waters of the Persian Gulf had returned to an eerie calm. Smoke from burning oil rigs and wrecked ships lingered in the sky. Communication silence fell over what had been a frenetic battle zone just hours earlier. In total, the U.S. had destroyed 2 oil platforms, sunk or severely damaged 6 Iranian naval vessels, and struck several shore installations. Remarkably, there were no American fatalities, only 2 aircraft damaged, and a few injuries reported. For the Iranian Navy, however, the day had been catastrophic. The strategic implications of Operation Praying Mantis were significant. Militarily, it sent an unambiguous message. The United States would not tolerate threats to its forces or to the freedom of navigation in international waters. Politically, it showcased to the global community that America was both willing and able to retaliate in a measured, professional, and overwhelmingly effective manner. It reinforced U.S. deterrence in a region already volatile with tension from the prolonged Iran-Iraq war. For Iran, the operation marked a turning point. The losses sustained at sea, particularly the near destruction of key naval assets, forced the Iranian leadership to reassess its maritime posture. There was a growing realization that continued harassment of U.S. and allied shipping would invite retaliation far beyond Iran's capacity to absorb. The naval defeat underscored the futility of confronting American power head-on, particularly in conventional terms. Diplomatically, Operation Praying Mantis added momentum to behind-the-scenes efforts to bring an end to the Iran-Iraq war. Just months after the operation, Iran agreed to a United Nations-brokered ceasefire, finally ending a bloody conflict that had raged for 8 years and cost hundreds of thousands of lives. Though the ceasefire had many contributing factors, including war fatigue, economic strain, and international pressure, the sharp military defeat inflicted during Praying Mantis likely accelerated Tehran's decision to seek peace. In retrospect, the operation has become a case study in modern naval warfare. It demonstrated the utility of combined arms, rapid deployment, and the effectiveness of rules of engagement that allowed for decisive action without escalation into a broader war. It also illustrated the importance of readiness in peacetime patrol operations, how a single mine strike could trigger a full-scale, legally justified military response. To the sailors, aviators, and commanders involved, April 18th was a test of resolve, courage, and professionalism. They passed with distinction. The success of Operation Praying Mantis reaffirmed the strength of the U.S. Navy and reminded the world that even in the murky, mine-laden waters of the Persian Gulf, American forces remained vigilant, precise, and overwhelmingly capable. Today, the legacy of that operation endures. Naval planners still study it. Historians reference it as a pivotal moment in late Cold War geopolitics, and veterans of the mission remember it as a moment when duty, danger, and discipline intersected to make history, decisively and in a single day. Operation Praying Mantis stands as a lasting testament to the effectiveness of a carefully crafted and decisively executed military response. It wasn't merely a tactical success. It was a masterclass in how a well-coordinated display of power, precision, and professionalism could shift the strategic balance in a volatile region. In the high-stakes arena of international conflict, especially during the tense closing chapters of the Cold War, this operation showcased just how vital readiness, accurate intelligence, and clear decision-making are in safeguarding national interests. In the aftermath of the attack on the USS Samuel B. the United States could have responded with overwhelming force or hesitated under the weight of diplomatic consequences. Instead, it pursued a measured, proportionate response, one that would demonstrate resolve without triggering a broader regional conflict. That nuance, knowing when and how to strike, is part of what has made Operation Praying Mantis so widely studied and admired in military circles to this day. At its heart, the operation underscored a fundamental truth of naval warfare and modern power projection. Success doesn't always hinge on raw firepower, but rather on the ability to integrate intelligence, planning, timing, and logistics into a cohesive and agile strike. The level of coordination achieved by the various U.S. Navy assets involved was extraordinary. Carrier-based aircraft, missile-equipped surface combatants, and helicopter gunships all worked together across a vast maritime theater. Orders were followed with precision, even under fire, and complex missions were executed in dynamic conditions. It also highlighted the strategic utility of forward presence. The United States Navy was already in the Gulf, not mobilizing from afar, when the mine strike occurred. That proximity allowed for rapid response. Within days, forces had been reassigned, missions planned, and retaliatory assets deployed. The operation demonstrated that sustained naval presence isn't just about deterrence, it's about readiness. It's about having the tools already in place to respond before an adversary can exploit hesitation. Intelligence played a crucial role as well. The U.S. had spent months monitoring Iranian naval movements, radio traffic, and mine-laying activities. When the Samuel B. was hit, it wasn't an isolated incident. It was the culmination of a broader pattern. Analysts and planners were able to quickly identify the source of the threat, determine key Iranian nodes of command and surveillance, and target them precisely, all while keeping the risk of civilian casualties at a minimum. That intelligence backbone made the speed and precision of Praying Mantis possible. For veterans who participated, Operation Praying Mantis remains etched into memory not just for the firepower exchanged, but for the discipline displayed. Rules of engagement were followed to the letter. Evacuation warnings were issued to Iranian personnel on oil platforms. Targets were carefully selected. Damage was assessed and contained. There were opportunities for overreach, but restraint prevailed. That professionalism under pressure elevated the operation from a mere act of retaliation to a display of American naval doctrine at its best. Observers of Middle Eastern history also note how Praying Mantis reflected a broader geopolitical shift. In the late 1980s, the U.S. was increasingly being drawn into Gulf affairs, not just as a supplier of weapons or supporter of allies, but as an enforcer of international norms. Freedom of navigation, the security of global oil supplies, and deterrence of state-sponsored aggression were no longer abstract principles. They were operational priorities. Operation Praying Mantis was a clear signal that America would act decisively in defense of those priorities. It also sent a message to other global actors, particularly the Soviet Union and regional adversaries, about American capabilities. While tensions with Iran were the immediate context, the broader Cold War chessboard was still in play. Moscow watched closely as its regional partner was outmaneuvered and outgunned in a matter of hours. Allies in the Gulf took note, as did adversaries. The operation reinforced the credibility of U.S. power projection, something that could not be taken for granted in an era when proxy wars and gray zone tactics were commonplace. In retrospect, Operation Praying Mantis is more than a footnote in U.S. military history. It is a cornerstone event that embodies the enduring principles of modern warfare. It reminds policymakers, military planners, and future leaders of what can be achieved when preparation meets opportunity, when force is applied judiciously, and when objectives are clearly defined. The ability to strike without stumbling into a broader war, to win a battle without losing moral or strategic footing, is rare. That is exactly what Operation Praying Mantis achieved. The sailors and airmen who served in that mission carried out their duties with courage, competence, and clarity of purpose. Many would go on to serve in later conflicts, in Iraq, in the Balkans, and in the long wars that followed 9/11. But for them, Praying Mantis was a defining moment. It showed them and the world that even in an era of shifting alliances and murky motives, the U.S. Navy could still act with the precision of a scalpel and the force of a sledgehammer, whichever the situation required. Decades later, military historians continue to examine the operation in war colleges and strategic studies programs. It is held up not only for what it accomplished tactically, but for what it demonstrated strategically. It was the day the U.S. Navy reminded the world that America could fight smart, fight fast, and fight clean when it needed to. And in a time when threats to maritime freedom continue to evolve, from mines to missiles, piracy to cyber attacks, Operation Praying Mantis remains a powerful reminder that readiness, intelligence, and decisive action are not relics of the past. They are, as ever, the foundations of effective defense in an uncertain world.